Thank you. All right, good evening. We are back live after a short break. We're at 7:35. We'll continue our discussion with the operating budget. We just finished doing transit. We are now at a overall tax increase levy of plus 5.95%, which includes a new transit system to begin on April 1st, which is very exciting. More details to follow on that in the coming months. At this point, we are continuing to finish off operating budget. At this point, I'll ask any other councillors who wish to bring forth a topic for discussion, debate, concern regarding operating budget. Any further requests to entertain the topic? Councillor Penrod. Phil, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk.
You're welcome.
I think since we're going the motion route, this is a fairly simple motion. I move that we fund the, let me just find my
Mr.
page.
J, have your motion?
No.
Nope. Okay, we'll take a second and just let you verbalize it, and then we'll wordsmith it for you.
So I'm looking at the FTE related to the FTE related to a procurement specialist that comes with a price tag of a 0.5% increase to the levy.
Which page of the budget are you on the hard copy? I think it's in the supplemental information section.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Page 128.
Okay, if you have a hard copy of the budget, it's on page 128. Program enhancement, corporate procurement. I'll let you get there, Phil. Make sure we're talking the same language. I think we are, but just.
Yeah.
So page 128. Okay, there's a motion there drafted for you. You want to have a look at that and make sure what you want to say.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll move that the proposed 2024 municipal operating budget be amended by adding the unfunded full-time equivalent FTE corporate procurement position at the rate of $125,000 as set out on page 128 of the 2024 proposed budget item 3.1 as a position to be funded from the tax levy.
Thank you, Mr. Penrod. Please speak to your motion.
Thank you. One of my questions to administration that I got a decent answer back on. So I would encourage people to check out that answer. It was more than decent. I don't know why I said decent. It was a great answer. But my question was, why isn't this funded? It seems like a no-brainer to fund something like this. I hear from administration the fact that it came forward, even though it was unfunded, as something where it would be a huge, it's flagged as being a benefit to the whole community and certainly to the work of administration to drive our procurement forward. I hear not infrequently frustration or sort of concern about numbers that are coming in on things that we're having costed from council. And most importantly, I hear it in the community. There's oftentimes a disconnect between when folks have an idea that they're supportive of, and then we try to operationalize the idea, whether capitally or from the operational budget, and a number comes back and people are scratching their heads saying, this just does not square with my expertise in the private sector or the charitable sector or whatever. And I do get that there's a certain disconnect. Public projects, as has been explained well before by Mr. Lewicki, have some extra elements that are not always considered in other things. But to wrap up and be short, I think the last piece that's important about this is there's a certain amount of cost recovery. That's not labeled in there, but the hope is that this is something that we can invest in that will actually drive down the price that we're paying as a community for some of the capital projects we're working on, for some of the growth pieces that we're doing. And so that's why I would speak for this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Penrod. Oh, so you were done?
Yep, I was.
I thought you were. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Penrod. Appreciate the reasoning for your motion. At this point, I'll ask for members of council to offer their suggestions, thoughts, opinions on the motion as proposed by Councillor Penrod. Councillor Deliberations, Nathan, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. Just looking for clarification, just running through finance org chart here, and I see a position for, so I guess this will go to well, to administration. There's a procurement clerk. Is anyone able to tell me the difference between this proposed position of procurement specialist versus a procurement clerk?
Mr. DeBlanco, if you could, please.
Sure, thanks for the question. So the role of the clerk is really operational, dealing with purchase orders, day-to-day purchasing. The role of the specialist would be a more higher level, dealing with tenders, larger procurements, and guiding the policy and procedures within the organization.
Thank you, Mr. DeBlanco. As many probably already see, my pockets are pretty tight. But I do feel that this is an initiative that could result in significant cost savings, especially on the contractual side. Having someone in a position like this that goes and obviously evaluates the tenders and potentially down the road, if we modify policy or what have you, we could make it a requirement for X amount of tenders, which obviously increases the competitiveness of some of those bids. So although there's an initial upfront cost, I feel like the down the road cost savings would more than pay for this position. So I think it's an important one that yeah, brings some financial prudence to the team. So something that I will be supporting.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Councillor Barnard, followed by Councillor McCoy-Swain. Kathy, you have the floor, madam.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Penrod. Not a specialist in this area by any stretch of the imagination, so hopefully my question doesn't appear too naive. But to the administration, if this was actually revenue expense neutral, wouldn't there be some revenue showing in the budget then?
Mr. DeBlanco?
Thanks for the question. It wouldn't be revenue per se. It would be a reduction of overall expenses.
True, but again, we're proposing, or at least the motion is proposing, that there would be cost savings. How can I be sure that's going to happen? Because I'm not at all convinced that the addition of another person is going to necessarily find the best price, when perhaps it's inflation, or it's the fact we're a municipality, or it's other reasons why the prices are going up. Isn't that something that our staff look into anyway?
Yeah, and I want to be clear, a lot of the practices the organization does undertake at different levels. It's not that procurement practices aren't being followed. This position is just an additional resource to look at that. And the intent is that additional resources should offset some of the costs that would be related to it.
I guess my point is there's no guarantee of that. I mean, that's it's an expense, and it will likely be it will be an ongoing expense. So that's my feeling at this point. Unless there's other reasons to compel, I would not be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate that. Next to speak is Councillor McCoy-Swain. Sam, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. Just to pick up on that, the 125K does not include any realized savings, right? That's 125K. Anything we get on top of that is a bonus. So if we're approving 125, that's the position. So, but thank you for bringing this forward. My question is more broad around project management office. So Mr. Loki, I'll tee you up here. Maybe just, so from what I understand, you know, and we've had all the discussions here around, you know, how come this costs this much, or how come it's gone up significantly? You know, procurement a key part of that. Help me understand from a project perspective, when do we the city of Beaumont manage that project versus when do we contract that out in your mind?
Mr. Lewecki.
Through the mayor to Councillor Munkoff-Swain. Thanks for the question. So our project management office provides project management oversight to capital projects. And when necessary, we ensure we bring consultants on board to do design engagement and/or construction management. Project managers are still expected to complete oversight of consultants, manage contracts and payments, as well as ensure the project meets the City of Beaumont requirements and expectations. Project management fees are typically estimated at 10% of the overall budget. So essentially, unless a more refined estimate is available, project management fees are not utilized to complete projects, will be released back to the appropriate funds, like to the appropriate funding sources. So essentially sorry, could you repeat your question? Did I?
No, you captured that. And my original
thought around this is there a dollar value? So like any projects under 200,000, we manage that, or like when we did the BSRC expansion, we contracted that out to a third party to run the project for us, right? And so if we're going to fund this position, are they going to help with those larger projects, or are we still going to be paying those fees? So is there a dollar value that we kind of that we contract out project management?
Through the mayor to Councillor Monkoff Swain, our team basically manages all capital projects with the exception of some areas who manage their own projects. For instance, the corporate analytics and technology team do some of their own work and others as well. But for the most part on the capital budget efforts, we manage, our PMO manages those contracts. Now, depending on the size of the project and the needs, we may bring in consultants to do, as I said, like construction oversight and so forth, but our project managers will still, or our project management team would still have oversight of that, of those activities, just to make sure that the city's best interests are kept in mind. And of course, the contracts are being satisfied and so forth, all the contract terms and such.
Okay, thank you. And the reason I'm asking these questions, I know that we have invested in more project management support and really identifying, people with project management experience to run these. The reason why I'm bringing this up, and it's still on the motion, but I'll just refer people to page 34 in the budget. We're talking about the traffic safety program here, and you guys have chosen to break it out, and you've shown the PM fees in here. So I'm going to ask the question, but so this is a capital item of $115,000 to put signalized crosswalks and traffic calming measures in there. We've got $20,000 in there for project management fees. So and I'll ask that question when it comes up to it. But to me, I'm hoping that, and so maybe you could speak to that. If we fund a position like this, does this help administration alleviate the pressures to contract out for such little expenses like this?
Basically, when we put estimates together, we use an estimate of 10% for project management fees, which is when we don't know the scope or the scope isn't refined, that's the number we use. Once we get more refinement in the scope, we can get a better estimate on the numbers for what the project management fees will be. The other factor to consider, as I mentioned in my previous response, is that any fees that aren't utilized or any time or funds that aren't utilized under the project management line item go back to the funding source. So it's an estimate. Sometimes we don't use much of that. Sometimes we use more of that. And so that money would be returned to the funding source and or transferred to a project with a higher priority.
Okay, perfect. And so to actually get back to the motion, when I went through all the unfunded projects positions, this is the one that stood out to me the most. I wasn't sure where we would be from a tax levy perspective. I believe that this is going to make a big difference. I didn't know if we had 125,000 in there this year, but right now my lean is yes based on where we're at. So I'll leave it there and see where other council's going. But thanks to Councillor Penrod for bringing it forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Any additional members of council wish to speak to this motion? Councillor McCook. Kat, you have the floor.
Sorry, can we just get what the impact would be on the tax levy for this?
Yeah.
Up,
I can do
please. And we're at
approximately
5.95?
5.95 right now. It'd take us to roughly 6.4-ish, 6.45 in that range. Does that help you, Councillor, at this point? Thank you. Anybody else? Any other members of council wish to speak to this motion? Councilman Newkirk, and I'll follow up myself after Steve is done. Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I've been busy listening to the discussion here, and I was trying to figure out the question that I asked out of the many that I asked, but from my memory, there wasn't a strong push from administration to fund this position in the answer that I recall. And So I had moved on from thinking that this was prudent to put into this budget, because basically the answer that I saw in the questions was, you know, we have what we need in place and we got it, right? Like that was that in my head, that's what I thought the answer had said. So one of the things that would be nice to quantify from this would be, you know, if you fund this position, which, you know, how are we gonna see the payback? I definitely see that adding more to the procurement strategy in the big picture should bring savings back, but I just wish we could quantify that a little better. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to find the answer for that question. Does anyone recall which actual question number it was?
188.
No, yeah, no, there was a more wholesome answer to the one that I had asked here. Yeah,
Try and find it.
man, which
Take your time.
question did I ask? Which number was that? 256?
Number 256. Question 256.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Yeah, so the part of the answer that I'm keyed in on here is project costing challenges have been greatly improved with the implementation of the project management office to support the methodology of initiate, plan, build, close for projects. This process better supports council through the budget process as scoping and design occur in year one and build in year two with appropriate exceptions, allowing for more accurate cost estimates to be provided as the project is refined. So I believe that is more the idea and the direction we're going. And I don't know that we've been able to give that a go. I think that this year would be the first time where we're trying to get a little bit of separation between the design and the build. So, you know, perhaps the position is a year early to see how we can do what is proposed in the initiate, plan, build, close through the current PMO. So anyhow, I'm on the fence on this one right now. I got to continue gathering my thoughts a little bit here. I wish there was a quantifiable way to show if you invest this in this position, we can see direction here, here, and here, and or we can see savings here, here, and here. I'm confident that that would happen, but just struggling to make that connection. If anyone on administration can help me with that, feel free. But that's just where I'm at, Mayor.
Mr. Lewicki, would you care to venture in on the conversation?
Through the mayor to Councillor Van Newkirk, what we're finding, and thanks for bringing that question up. We are definitely looking at the doing the designs in 1 year, following through with the build in a future year, and I think council will start to see the benefit of that as we move forward. We do have some projects that are in design now that will be coming forward in Q1 for future consideration, and I believe there'll be a lot of value in that type of a process as opposed to trying to design, engage, and build something all in 1 year, which, as we've seen with other projects, can be quite frustrating for both council and administration. What this position adds for value to the city is that it allows for us to better plan our procurement efforts. We can do them sooner, is what we're seeing is there is a bottleneck on the procurement side of things where we don't necessarily get things out as quickly as we would like to. And so some of it's a capacity issue, some of it's has to do with just having a better knowledge base. And I think having that position in the finance department versus directly in our PMO office does have its benefits as well. Maybe Mr. DeBlanco may want to speak more to that, but essentially that's one of the big benefits. We're able to tender sooner. We get better pricing. We get our things done quicker. We're not having carry forwards. There's a lot of trickle effects or domino effects to having the right resources in place. So hopefully that answers your question. I'm not sure if Mr. DeBlanco has anything to add to that.
CEO Schwartz or Mr. DeBlanco wish to speak before CEO Schwartz? Mr. Schwartz.
Yeah, just to build off of that, you know, in a nutshell, we're at an awkward size. We've grown so fast and we had not gotten out of the gate on our procurement and our tendering process. So one of the strategies, and anybody who's involved in tendering or procurement know that the first out of the gate gets the best of the best at the best price. By coming in late, that costs us a lot of money every year. Now, having somebody dedicated to the procurement side will allow us to get out of the gate quicker, get on top of things, be able to have more accurate costs quicker. And we're just growing. We're at that stage where we can't have 5 people following different processes in most cases to doing procurement.
Thanks, CEO Schwartz. Appreciate that. Councilman Newkirk, a follow-up? Nope, you're good. Okay. Any further requests to speak on this issue? I do appreciate Councilman Newkirk's, Councilor Telebus, I'll go to you first and then I'll do a comment myself. Nathan, you have the floor.
Thank you. I appreciate Councillor Van Nieuwerk's comments there, and I'll put it to administration, I guess, just a true and candid answer. Do you feel that this would bring significant value and that obviously being a bit optimistic, but that a position like this would almost cover the cost of the savings would almost cover the cost of the position?
CEO Schwartz, you want to get a crack at that one?
Yes, we do.
There you go. Candid.
That's a simple answer. Always simple is always good. Less is more sometimes. You're good, Nathan. Thank you. Councillor Penrod. Phil, you have the floor.
Just to clarify, Mayor, am I speaking last and then we're moving to vote on the motion, or I kind of queued up with that in mind, but I don't want to cut off any further conversation.
No problem. I'll come back to you then, make sure everyone else has a chance to speak. So, Councillor Barnhart, Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. CAO Schwartz, I don't feel as comfortable that that's actually going to be a wash here, that we're going to basically pay, it's going to pay for itself, as I did with some of the other items that we've been talking about. So I'd like to say yes to this based on your confidence. Can you say anything more that would help me to believe that actually, like, just give me something more to.
CEO Schwartz.
If you, I don't know the total cost of our purchasing and each year, but Curtis would. If you look at examples like the outdoor rinks a few years back, and we came to council with, I believe, $200,000 per outdoor rink. That was based on the knowledge we had at the time. Again, we were designing and building in the same year. Those outdoor rinks came back at $600,000 a piece. We think we could have saved some of that money and had a better estimate to begin with. So we take 10%. If we save 10% off of that, that's $60,000 times 3 is 180. We've just paid for that position 1.5 times. And those are just small examples of the procurement we do on a regular basis. That if we streamlined it, you know, when I first got here, everybody had credit cards and that's how they bought stuff. And then it was a nightmare for finance to be able to pull that together, and people were buying it everywhere. So we've since put policies and directives in place to steer people in certain directions, and those things have paid off in dividends like you wouldn't believe, just on the sheer volume.
Just further to that, I mean, I appreciate you, candor, and I do think that's important to refresh my memory as to what it is that we're trying to fix. Yeah, now I lost the train of thought that I was going on. I was on a different track there for a minute, and it just went off the track. So
I'll come back to you.
My work here is done.
Must not have been something I should have said, so I'll just stop there.
I'll come back to you if you need to, okay? Not to worry. Councilman Cook, Kat, you have the floor.
Thank you. Yeah, I think initially I was a no. I just, to Councilor Van Nieuwkerk's point, I wasn't sure that this was a year because we are trying the new kind of plan 1 year, build out the next year process. But I think when CEO Schwartz said, you know, it gives us the ability to get out of the gate faster, I think that was really important. And, you know, when you're able to do that, it does make a significant difference as far as costing. And we do continuously hear that we need to do a better job around this stuff. And if this is a position that is going to inch us closer to tightening up some of those things and doing a better job on that and helping support the team through the costing of some of these projects, then I think there is a lot of value in the position.
Thank you, Counselor. I appreciate that. Counselor Barnard, the thought popped back in. Okay, Choo Choo, there you go.
There,
You have
thank
the
you very
mic.
much. CAO Swartz, if you are as sure of this, why did it not rise to the point of actually being one of your priorities? That's, I guess, where I thought we were maybe looking at a different strategy and this would have been nice to have, but you didn't see it as a priority when you did the budget. So your thinking on that, I'd like to hear.
CEO Schwartz.
What we did with the budget is got to a number that we would, that's how we do it every year. What will it take to maintain service? And when we saw that number, it was like, holy, that number was, I think the first number we started with was 14%. And we had to find a way to get that down because we knew that was unreasonable. So right away, the first decision we made was no enhancements. We can't afford it this year. We need to look in future years.
Mhm.
So we reduced contributions to different reserves. We put a freeze on any new positions. There was tons of positions that people want and needed. Last year, I believe we added 8 positions. We were able to do that. With this inflationary times, it just wasn't. So all of those positions are now listed as unfunded.
Mhm. I thought that was what it was driving it. And quite honestly, that's what's driving my feeling that I need to vote against this. I just don't know where we're going to end up.
Yeah.
Because if there's 4 or 5 more of these requests that come through, we're back up again. And so that's kind of at a place where
Mhm.
if I say yes to this, how do I say, yeah, I'd have to say yes to a couple of others that may be coming. And this one just didn't rise to the top for me.
It's a
So
quandary.
while I see it's always good to enhance services in this area, I'm just not feeling that it's something I can say yes to at this point, but.
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Counselor. I will go to round 2 before I have my comments myself. So Councilman Newkirk, Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, to Councillor Barnhart's last comment, that is some of the benefit of how we did the budget last year. You know, now we've got here with motions and we're stuck with the motions that we've done and we own those decisions, right? So,
Yep.
you know, so we're gonna hear nothing but reasonable, grounded and rational requests from here on out. The budget is full of unfunded things that all have merit in some way. But what individual councillors have to decide right now is what are you comfortable with on the tax roll, right?
Yeah.
Versus what does the community need, right? Because that is one of the things that we also need to think about. So anyways, I just wanted to add that comment out there for thought. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I think you read my mind with that. Okay, Nathan, you want to speak and then I'll try and get a comment in and then I'll kind of wrap it up if we can. Nathan,
Perfect.
you have the floor.
Thank you. I think it's important to note that the whole goal of this position within any organization, much like with a city, is to provide efficiencies and seek out competitive bids. And that's what we really need to do. We need to make sure that we are evaluating all aspects of a project. We're sourcing out as many vendors as we can so that we can get the best price. The simple example of the rinks is again so simple, but could potentially bring in a lot of saved money. So yeah, I think there's not too many times that we would vote for a full-time position that's going to bring in cost savings. And for that reason, I think people should consider it.
Thank you, Counselor. See no further comments at this point. I'm going to jump in a couple things here. When I first read the question from Councilman Newkirk, I looked at the request for the position unfunded. I saw the reasoning for it, as Steve mentioned in his answer, made sense to me, and I thought that's fine. I do understand the idea of the procurement person. I do have one quick clarifying question as to how far of a reach would this person have in terms of procurement? How small a project would they be involved in? How large? Can you just give me a little more of a feel for that? I mean, every position we have in staff is important. Every position you guys put forward is important for a reason. They're not there just willing, you know, there's a good reason for every position you put forward, funded or not. So give me a little better idea of the scope this person could have, and then I'll give another thought on that. Mr. DeBlanco, could you speak to that possibly?
Sure. Just building off what Mr. Lewicki and alluded to in his answer before. This position is intended to provide oversight on the city's entire procurement program, including those higher level procurements. We do have a purchasing clerk in place that deals with the low level purchasing. So it's oversight on that as well as dealing with the more complex procurements.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That was my interpretation. I want to make sure I had it clear in my mind. So again, going back to the comments before that Mr. Schwartz mentioned, the initial budget was going to be whatever, and the administration pared it down to what they felt was at a reasonable place to start at 6.49 with no full-time equivalents. I'm with Councillor Barnhart. I'm thinking, well, this is, to me, in a perfect world, this position makes sense, as does planning, as does law enforcement, municipal enforcement. We can find lots of jobs we can definitely put forward. So I'm struggling right now because my initial thoughts were the answer I got from Councilor Rico's question was sufficient for me to look at this and move forward as unfunded, but I'm listening to my colleagues and I'm just gonna get my head around this a bit more. Seeing no other requests to speak at this point, Councilor Penrod, it is your motion. So by the looks of it, I'm going to go to you for a final comment on your motion, and then I will call for the vote. Councilor Penrod, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Daniluk. So I think I want to begin my remarks by saying, whatever decision we come to, I think this has been an important conversation. That's why I made the motion, essentially. I want us as a council to own the decision that we make. We've referred back to why administration chose not to fund this, but I think it's equally important for us to remember that it was put forward in the budget, although unfunded. So it was put forward as important, but they've given us some more color on how they went through that difficult decision to cut back and get to kind of the least bad news that we could give the community in this time of unprecedented cost of living increase. And so we have made some difficult decisions in other areas to bring down that thing. And actually, if we fund this position at this point, we'll be almost right back to their original number that they came to. So they had their reasons for doing what they did. But I think we need to own the decision now. It's not because of what administration recommended or didn't, because we're not now back to that number. That brings me to page 10 in the hard copy of the budget document. There's an economic principle that says there's no such thing as a free lunch. So we can have 0% increases for a time sometimes. And in fact, I was very grateful as a resident of the community when council made the hard decision to really keep costs in check and pursue 0% strategies around the time of COVID, just because there was so much turmoil in the community. So I want to thank you for those. And so these remarks are not meant to throw shade on people. It's always difficult to know everything that went into a decision if you're not actually around the table and reading through all the documents. And so I have the utmost respect for decisions made in the past. That being said, the bill has come due. And it's not just in Beaumont, it's everywhere across Alberta. And even today we were reading news from other parts of the country too. Everyone's having these difficult conversations. So I do come back to points that Mr. Natelibus has made. I think we have even more candid data now to say that we're more than confident that this position will pay for itself. So is it going to start paying for itself this year, or is it going to start paying for itself in another year? And for all of those reasons, I'll be voting for this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Before I call for the vote, Mr. Blank, would you mind just let us know, should this motion pass, our proposed levy increase of 5.95% would go to what number, please? Just so we're understanding before we vote on this position.
It would be 6.45.
6.45? Okay. Okay. All right. That's the number. So with that, I will call for the vote. Give me 1 second just to set up the voting here. Council, please vote on the motion before you. That vote carries 6-1. Councillor Barnhart in opposition, 6 votes in favor. Motion's carried. Thank you, Council. So we're now at 6.45, Mr. Blanco, you said? Yes, thank you very much. Okay, are there any additional motions, consent, conversation, motion be brought forward on operating? We're still on operating here. No user fees yet. No, we'll do user fees as part of capital. Councilman Newkirk, Stephen, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We've had robust discussions last night and through into tonight. And as I stated last night, there was significant effort from council to put in 292 questions on the budget, and then significant effort from administration to answer all those questions. The preparations have been deep and long, but there's my question for administration is basically, do you have any other ideas on how we can reduce the tax levy? All of us up here have ideas on how we can increase it. There's a plethora of those. We've been we've used a few of the levers that we've had. We've had discussions on things that were proposed to bring down and things that were proposed to bring up. And I'm just wondering if there are any opportunities that council may have overlooked. Just looking for a little support there to see if there's another opportunity that could be thought of here that would work in support of bringing that overall tax increase down. Thank you.
Mr. Dollar, Mr. DeBlanco, who was Mr. Dollar, I see your mic is now on, sir.
Thank you very much for the question. I think the short answer is the well is really run dry for us. I would also suggest that if there were those mechanisms, we would have included them as part of the proposed. As we sit here today, I think council has moved into some territory that, is again a risk-based kind of perspective and is willingly accepted more risk in some areas. And I think that is, a path that is reasonable for council to take, wasn't reasonable for administration from our perspective to take in terms of putting it in the proposed. And I think as to any further levers for us to examine at this time, there really isn't. As we go forward between now and the spring is really when we look to do some refinement. The assessment growth number is one of those significant numbers, and it's a big number this year as we sit here today. Does the current mild weather help us in that? It possibly could. It's those factors between now and March, April, that we would be looking at any other opportunities and then present those opportunities to council come April is really what administration would typically do.
Yeah, no, thank you. The nugget you spit out at the end there was kind of where my head was going. We're going to have a discussion and we're going to end up at a certain point here through motions the way that we have. And then, there will be communication to the public. This is where we landed. But there is yet another opportunity, as you said, ahead of the, I don't know the correct terminology, but ahead of the, the official percent that's going to hit the roll. There's another opportunity for administration to, have a tighter look at things, given a few more months of operational things. So just wanted to bring that up and have that piece of the conversation now, because I think it's important perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. And Mr. Dollar, appreciate the candor of the answer. It kind of puts perspective on where we're at and what we're doing. And it's very helpful to continue on our discussion this evening. So I will ask one more time. I think I did ask already, any further items to be brought forth for operating? Okay, seeing none, we are completed with the operating budget. We are looking at a potential tax levy increase of 6.45%. We'll now move on to user fees. and then we'll get into capital, followed by utilities. So at that point, I think Councilor McGough-Swain has a question on user fees. Just before we get to that question, Sam, user fees, I had my tab in my book here. Give me 1 second just to find the tab. Thank you very much. Page 123 of a hard copy of your budget package. You'll see on page 123 a list of all the user fees on the page. So with that, open up to questions from council on user fees. Sam, I'll go to you first. Sam, you have the floor.
Thank you. And this links back to transit. No motion coming out of this. I just really want to speak to this. So I'll ask the question up front. The current cost of using our transit system is $5. Could you just confirm what assumptions administration's making in that report in terms of revenue? How much we assuming that the transit fare is going to cost?
Is that a Ms. Raymond question or Ms. O'Neill? Welcome. Your first chance to speak to council in this budget process.
You just
You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're
Through the
welcome.
Mayor to Councillor Munkoff-Swain. In the transit report that you would have received, we assumed a proposed fare of $6 per trip. This all still needs to be negotiated with Leduc Transit, and of course, council would have to approve the fees and charges.
So I recognize, I'll speak about timing here. So page 123 says notable fee changes, and there's nothing in there on transit. But I recognize that that report came in after the fact. So I'm pointing that out now for the record. So just let me speak to that. That $6 is unaffordable for people to take transit. My interest was coming here was to look at seeing if we could even reduce that. We're not getting much revenue from it. And so to go up to $6, just to give people a sense of what that would cost per day if you wanted to go, if you're working in Edmonton, by the time you pay $6 there, then you pay $2.75, and then you come back, that's $17.50, right? To just to get into the city, to go to work. I did it the other day, and I couldn't believe the cost. In Millwoods, and this is what people on the bus are telling me, in Millwoods, and I saw the sign, you can get a monthly park for $25, right? And so people are gonna, if they have the ability, that want to use transit, then if they're going to get in their car anyway and drive up to Ken Nickel, they're going to drive to Millwoods and park for $25 a month, and then we're not getting there. So my ask, I just wanted to bring this up here as administration's going through. I know you've got to engage the city of Leduc and Leduc County through that. I know you've got to talk through ARC. Like, it can't be $6 because then we're outpricing the very people who need it the most. So I don't know if you've got a comment around that. But I would like to understand how you guys are still negotiating this. Like, at what point do we come back and make that decision?
Ms. O'Neill, follow up, or you're good? Yeah, follow up, thanks.
No, I'd love you to answer that.
Yeah.
Mayor to Councillor Munkoff-Swain, absolutely, there's some price elasticity there for sure, right? If the price is too high, we won't have the ridership and the revenue. So this needs to be part of our negotiations with Leduc Transit. For now, the fees and charges would be the $5 in the budget for the January to March for sure as part of Beaumont Transit. So with the two motions that were passed tonight regarding transit, I think we have a lot of information that we can now go back to Leduc Transit and really get into the more granular aspect, including pricing and fares. We need this to work for the city and its riders.
Okay, so just to triple check, when I'm voting for this budget on December 12th, I'm voting for a $5 fare for that bus. And you guys will come back after the end of first quarter. Part of that analysis, we'll talk about the potential recommendation to increase those user fees.
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted for the record. Okay, that's all I had on user fees. I don't know why we're increasing the fee on fire permit, but I'll leave that and we can move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional members of council have any questions on user fees as per page 123 in our hard copy? Councilor Barnhart, Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I did ask the question, but I just want to ask the administration to expand on it because I don't think my intention was clear. The question I'm looking at is question 33, and it's on user fees. I had asked what the justification for the 7% increase in rec facility fees, which is down the bottom of the page. And I had asked for details on which fees are increasing and by how much, and how much additional revenue is projected. The answer that came back didn't give me the information that I was looking for. It said the fee increase applies across all fees and charges to offset the increased cost, includes personnel and building utility cost increases. So I understand our costs are going up. What I was getting at is, is everything in there going up by 7%, or are there certain things going up and some things aren't going up? So just a little more detail on that would be appreciated. Not sure who's answering. Mr. Suter?
Mr. Suter.
Thanks for the question, Councilor Barnhart. Yeah, when we looked at our budget to start, as everyone else, at every other department, we want to balance that budget to maintain services. So one of the levers that we have is to increase our user fees across the board in recreation. And we look at what we needed to raise to balance that budget. And additionally, we had increasing utility costs for the three rec buildings, power and gas, significant increases projected for 24. And that's where that number landed to cover that, those expenses. One thing that council should be aware of, those fees in that area don't kick in till August 1st. So there is a 6-month delay on that before those increase are seen by the residents, which is the annual process.
Appreciate that. If I go back to your budget on page 112, the line I should be looking at, I'm assuming, is sales and user charges. Yeah, and with 7% overall, this increase is 10%. So I'm just, and you just said it doesn't kick in till August. So what else is at play there?
Mr. Suter.
So I'm not sure I'm understanding the question.
Well, you said 7% across the board is
Yes.
what I heard you say.
Yes.
The change in the budget for sale and user charges is 10%.
On
And you
page
just said it
112.
wasn't kicking in till August. So I'm just wondering if there's something I'm missing there.
I'll let Mr. Blanco answer that.
Sure, thanks for the question. So the 10% number that you're alluding to, Councillor Barnhart, that's a sum of two factors. One is the increase in fees and the other is increase in usage. So more users.
So some of it is more people coming,
Correct.
as well as the increase in.
And then just to refer back to the question you're answering, just to get a fulsome answer here, is you can see also on that page is total expenses are actually going up 11%. So the increase in fees is in place to offset the additional costs that the recreation department sees.
Okay, well, just to speak to it, I'm just concerned about the people that are using it and the effect that's going to have, a 7% increase. And we're having more people come. So again, it seems like a tax grab in my mind, which it is.
I appreciate that.
I don't have anything to suggest though, in terms of, I don't have enough detail to
Alternative.
suggest a proposal at this point, but I do want to specify that it's another form of taxation. We all know that. And I just feel for the people that are using it, I want them to use it more, which they seem to be doing. I don't want to scare them away because they can't afford it for similar reasons. I don't want the transit fees to be too high either, but I think the increase is a bit high this year.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate your comments. Are there any further comments or questions from council on user fees? Councillor Penrod, you have the floor, followed by Councillor McCook. Philip, go ahead.
Thanks. Maybe just to ask for some more color regarding the last statement and the line of questioning from Councillor Barnhart. Can you give us a little bit of idea as you were coming to that number for the 7% increase, how much consultation you did with other services in the region, and how does this increase set our user fees against some of the other rec facilities that folks might go to if they don't come here?
Mr. DeBlanco.
Yeah, I'll speak to just the dollars and cents portion, and hopefully Mr. Suter can allude to the comparators in the region. Some of the analysis that was done in proposing the rates was looking at what the cost recovery was for the recreation facilities and programs in prior years and ensuring that the cost recovery in 2024 matched that so that we weren't, the cost recovery for those programs and services wasn't going down, that it was staying the same. So that proposed back that 7% increase was justified to offset the increased expenses we saw. If Mr. Suter has any further detail on comparators, I'll turn it over to him.
Mr. Suter.
Thank you. Yeah, we do typically, Councilor Barnhart, look around the region. There's no apples to apples when we do that exercise. However, we sit sort of in the middle, if I can speak candidly there. In some cases, we're a little higher. In some cases, we're a little lower. So, but we typically land in the middle. Everybody's up and down. We did a number of years where we didn't raise user fees at all. And this is, again, in line with the conversation tonight. It's that we can't keep it at zero, so we have to offset our expenses. But to the point, we're in the median, I guess, if you will, in the middle there. So thank you.
Ms. Penrod, that's sufficient answer. You're good. All right, seeing no further questions from other members of council on user fees. Next phase of our budget this evening is capital. And so with that, I'll ask Mr. DeBlanco to do his introduction to the capital budget. And then we'll have the opportunity to have council members asking clarifying questions from the questions that were answered by Mr. DeBlanco and his team on the answers given back to council. Then we'll delve into page 22 of our hard copy budget, which is the capital budget. And we'll start off with a renewal, then growth, and also levy at the bottom. So Mr. DeBlanco, when you're ready, sir, you have the floor.
Sure, thank you. So yeah, the introduction here will be relatively brief. I'll ask that if we can bring page 22 up on the screen, just so while I'm speaking, we can have it on the screen. So the municipal capital budget, I alluded to this yesterday in the presentation that the utility portion has been included in the utility budget. So municipal capital budget, as shows on the screen, has an inherent prioritization with renewal of existing assets and infrastructure at the top. That's why those are funded by reserves. So we spoke about reserve allocations and draws from reserve to fund capital replacement renewal. That's what we see at the top of the screen. You will see there's one item there that is funded by a government transfer. I'll have to look at specifically what it is. It's a large fleet unit replacement of that. The reason for that is just the actual balance of the reserves in order to do some management and ensure that there's an ample balance in there for future years and kind of deal with some of the issues we're having with reserve balances. We did recommend that one of those units be funded by a government transfer. There are 5 renewal programs within the municipal capital budget: fleet and equipment, facility, parks, playground and play field, transportation, which include obviously is roads, and technology. Next step is the growth piece. That includes a large project for the joint high school assembly. Some projects for the growth of facilities, they're itemized there. The traffic safety program, you'll see that one is funded from reserve. So what that number is the essentially, I don't like to use the term profit in a local government, but that's the net surplus from ATE. So that program in the operating budget generates $155,000 of surplus in the year. That goes directly into the traffic safety reserve, and that funds traffic safety initiatives. Next from that is fleet and equipment growth, some growth towards the parks, playgrounds, and play fields. There's a line item there of $75,000 for council capital initiatives. There aren't any projects funded from that within that, so that's an amount of money should council have smaller projects that could be used for. And then one for the room we're in here for the council chambers. Outside of that, there is a offsite levy project for the arterial roads.
Thank you, Mr. Blanco. I appreciate that. So at this point, council, questions were submitted to administration for answers. As we all know, any questions that you require clarification from those answers given back to you, any points of anything? If not, that's okay. We'll move on right on to the capital. I see Councilor Cook, followed by Councilor Barnhart. Kat, you have the floor.
Thank you. Do you want us to ask her questions now or just maybe ask them as the pieces come up?
Well, I'm planning to go through renewal first and the 5 categories of renewal, then move into growth. I'm more worried about any questions you got answers back for you need clarification on or anything that's unclear.
Sure, I'll ask the question then.
Please proceed.
Paving the road, to 243, can you just explain, obviously there would be extra costs, but, what would it take to be able to pave up to the Egg Society?
Mr. Lewicki, are you able to answer that? Hang on, I'll get the mic on for you. There you go.
Through the mayor to Councillor McCook, that paving that road isn't really an option because we are doing the ultimate design for that road right now with construction of the final roadway to begin next year. So paving what we have there isn't really, and I think we've mentioned this before, it wouldn't serve any purpose because we need to put in utilities and right of ways through that section to build out that portion of the city. So the preliminary design will be completed shortly with construction planned for as part of the bigger project next year. Do you want to?
Mayor to Councillor McCook, we also don't have the land acquisition along that portion of the Egg Society land to even be able to do that. We've been taking that as subdivision occurs, and currently we already are missing land acquisition along the north portion anyway of that right of way. So that would be something else we would need to acquire. And then to Mr. Lewicki's point, we would have to go back in later, cut the road open to bring the rest of the services because we're only servicing up to the West Rack site.
Perfect, that makes it much more clear, thank you. And then I have another question around the bouldering wall. Can you just speak to what it says the cost associated with enhancing the lease space at BSRC is 100,000 each year. In
Mr.
addition to the lease space fit up. Can you just speak to 100,000?
Good question. Yeah, the bouldering wall project was factored over 2 years. We've been talking about this for the last all of 23, really trying to line up with our operator in there now that provides that service on behalf of us for the climbing wall. Obviously, that's that vacant space adjacent. And the proposal was that we would purchase a bouldering wall, have it installed. There's some renovations required, and then they would operate it as a partner with us on that. So we're excited about that opportunity. Obviously, it's been quite a negotiation to get to this point, even Councilor McCook. Those numbers have been in flux. So that actual operating number that you saw there is too high. It's actually probably more likely 50,000. And we're still in negotiations to bring that down. We're trying to get to a cost recovery piece as we offer a drop-in component. And we fully anticipate adding the bouldering wall to expands the demographic that may use that space, as well as interest in climbing in general, which I think will drive the numbers through the roof. They're getting good numbers on their drop-in now, and we're looking to expand that potentially. Obviously, cost recovery is a concern, and we're looking to build that into what we're doing. So that number, when it was first, it looks like it's changing on the fly here. We're working with them to see how much we're going to offer and what it looks like for us. So,
perfect. Thank you for that. That makes a lot more sense as to what it was and why that was there. Just a couple more clarifying questions, Mayor.
Yes, please. Please continue.
I think this is, I think one of the mayor's questions. Has there been any consideration given to making the new AV system in council chambers more compatible with hearing devices? And the answer was yes. Enhancing the existing system with assisted listing solution would be considered in future upgrades. So not in this upgrade, to be clear. Is that correct?
Oh, Ms. Bujaya? Madam Clerk?
Thank you for the question, Councillor McCook. No, that's not quite correct. So if we were to look at upgrading the system, that would be one of the considerations what we would look at for upgrading the system. We would have to explore what would be entailed, but our microphone system is fairly dated.
Yeah.
So we would look at a much more up-to-date advanced system, so hopefully more feature rich.
Okay, so it would hopefully be part of what is proposed. Okay, thank you. Okay, I think that's it for now, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barnard, followed by Councillor Van Newkirk, followed by Councillor Natelibus. Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
Welcome.
Is it okay I do a renewal and a growth question?
If they're part of the answer, part of the question you got, yes.
Yeah.
And we'll come back to do the actual renewal section first.
Okay, it's a combination, yeah.
Yeah,
No, it
just
is.
clarifying questions, answer you got, and then we'll get into discussion on fleet, facility and so on, in
Right,
case any motions are coming to change anything. Okay,
okay.
please
I
proceed as
understand.
best you can. Thank you.
So regarding the trail connections, so I'm not sure if that's Mr. Lewicki or, no, okay, sorry about that. So I had asked about if there were any trail connections coming this year. As we all know, there's some spots where it kind of ends and we're looking for that. And the answer was none scheduled for completion at this point in time. And then there was the second part about the a trail being contemplated along the east side of Beaumont, right by the driving range. And it looks like something else has to happen before that can happen. So I'm just wondering if it's possible, and I understand if this is just nothing we can talk about because it's regarding someone else's land or what that might be, but what would be the process to move that forward? Is that even possible?
Mr. Lewicki, your microphone's on, sir.
Through the mayor to Councillor Barnhart, I'll answer what I can. I think maybe Ms. Raymond has some information that I may not be able to explain. So with the trail along Range Road 241, there's this section that's missing directly east of the driving range is the problem area where we don't have the allotment or the alignment in order to create the trail. The section south of 50th Avenue, we do have what we need, and that trail is in the plan for 2025. It's the section directly east of the driving range that's the issue.
Mhm.
And that's maybe
So
Ms. Raymond can speak more to,
the process going forward,
The
if there is one,
process?
what would that be?
are you able to?
So the process going forward for the area by the golf course, is that what we're talking about?
By
Sorry?
the driving range?
Yeah. So the driving range has no time frame for being removed. And once again, we don't have the land acquired. We would need to be able to do that through subdivision. Otherwise, we would be expropriating that and then having to pay for that. Whereas through subdivision, we get it for free. So I prefer to
So
wait.
the land from the road to the driving range doesn't belong to us, it belongs to the golf course.
Yeah, so we would only have what would be within the original right of way. And then the distance there. We don't fully have all of that. And then the other aspect of that too would be you end up setting the grades with the trails, which is a similar issue that we ran into with Triumph and Forest Heights going into Lakeview. And when we were looking at that trail alignment and the pace of development that was happening through there. So you need the development to be happening kind of adjacent or already happened in order for you to be able to go along with the trail. Otherwise you end up with very wonky scenarios, kind of like you see at Gallery, right? You know, it goes down on 510, that sort of thing. Like it's
Okay, so
yeah.
unless there's a subdivision happening there or some changes happening, we really can't put a trail in on that side.
Yeah, and I mean, that neighborhood's been under development since 1991, so
Appreciate that.
we'll see how that goes. Yeah.
Thank you. Mayor, I have another one about sidewalk
Yep.
and trail
Please proceed.
repair. So this is under the renewal as well. I think it's Mr. Lukey again. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we used to see a service level map for sidewalk repair? Or did I dream that? Is that just this year that we're not seeing that, or? I know there were several questions. I wasn't the only counselor looking for where are the sidewalks? Like what's the schedule of being repaired, but maybe not.
Through the mayor to Councillor Barnhart, since I've been here, I haven't seen a service level map for sidewalk repairs. I'm not sure if
So
another
perhaps we
member
knew,
of
yeah.
admin would have an answer on historically if we've done that. I'm not certain.
Mayor, could you give Mr. Schwartz the mic?
I apologize, Mr. Schwartz, sorry. I was.
Oh, that's all right. No, thank you. To my knowledge, we've never done that. But what you've just identified is something that will be part of the Customer Connect, where people will be able to go online and see where those different repairs are being made and different projects. So it'll be pretty cool then.
That'll be great because it's hard when you put in a request and it takes a long time to get to a
Mhm.
certain area. It's like,
Yep.
you know, and I know one I've been watching for a long time and it's by the purple.
Well, and you know,
Purple park there. that anybody
and you
wants
bring
to
up a
know.
good point, and Mr. Lewicki has shared that before. It's probably good to inform our public is we have a system that prioritizes, and then we have a pool of money that typically allows us to do the priority number ones. And then we re-inspect the next year and prioritize. So yeah, you're right. And there's certain clearances and gaps that indicate where the.
It would be
the
nice to
priority.
know where you are in the queue at least, because that gives you some sense that it's not been ignored, because I know it's not ignored. I just don't know when it's going to be done. And then lastly, Mayor, this one
Yes,
might
please
be for the
continue.
rest of council. I know some of my things are not as interesting as some of the others, but council capital initiatives in the growth, 75,000.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering if that's something that would be possible for council to say, look, we don't have any wants, we're looking at needs, and that might be,
Well-
but the question is, does that have any impact on tax levy?
When we get to growth,
Okay.
that section, you're free to ask that
You wanna
question
go
at
back
that
to
time, and
that?
maybe, it may be a motion to take that out. That's your prerogative at that time, okay?
All right, okay.
Thank you, appreciate that. Next on my list is Councillor Van Newkirk. Steve, you have the floor, followed by Councillor Natellis.
Yeah, thank you. And my question was about 3/4 answered. I was gonna talk about the 230,000 for renewal on the sidewalk rehabilitation. And the question I was gonna ask is how do and how will residents know what they're getting for this money? And the answer is through the upgrades we're gonna do, that it is gonna become visible. So I think that's just important thing to double down on. Councillor Barnhart, I did receive a couple of questions about that because there are some folks who have been watching and very passionate about some significant sections of sidewalk in the community and asking about prioritization, and we've heard them in front of us as well. So that's it on renewal for me, Mayor. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve, appreciate that. Next on Councillor Natellis, Nathan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll start with an easy one here, just in terms of technology replacement program. Madam Clerk, I don't know if you're able to confirm, but are we able to get wireless microphone for poor Miss Raymond, who's been wrapped around with that cord about 6 times? Is that slotted into there?
Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Natellenboss. We did look at wireless options as well as wired options. It's challenging because the wireless options, they are fairly slick, but they are more expensive and there's more points of failure. So there's always that added risk. So we would look at both options depending what our budget is and what we could do in the space. There are some hard limitations in the space just because of the age of the room, the configuration, the wiring. So we'd have to consider all those factors and we would try to make the best choice or the best value that we could get.
Perfect, thank you. Based on that response, my sincerest apologies to Ms. Raymond there, but just moving forward in all seriousness, I do have a question in regards to the parks, playground and playfield renewal. Just based on the update that was provided on the 28th in regards to Juneau Playground. It's noted as closed and the scope of work included the culvert installation, regrading, seeding and trail rehabilitation, resurfacing with the purpose to alleviate the drainage issues on site. I'm just wondering, does this not rectify the drainage concern to the extent that we could potentially save that additional 2 seconds here, additional 145,000?
Oh, sorry, whose microphone am I looking there? Mr. Lewicki.
Through the mayor to Councillor Natellenboss, thanks for the question. So the updates or the improvements we did in 2023, as if you drive by that area, you'll see are in that that northwest corner of the park, of Juneau Park, where there was practically a swamp or pond type area there that was, so we fixed those drainage issues. We repaired the trail. We put a culvert in to allow the drainage to come through and into that ditch. Now, the issues that are being repaired or improved next year focus around the actual playground pod. So there's flooding in the playground pod due to poor drainage. And the grading of the actual park doesn't allow it to actually go down to that ditch along 50th Street. So there's actually two separate drainage issues in the park. This year we chose to, for safety reasons, fix that northwest area because the trail was impassable, as probably most people have noted. Then we're going to focus on mostly around the playground. We're going to replace the picnic tables. We're going to redo some of the playground pod stuff and take out the pea gravel and put in the engineered wood fiber and fix the drainage issues there so that it's safer and more enjoyable for families to utilize that park space.
Okay, thank you. Next question here. It will sound sarcastic, but I promise you it's not. It's relating to the fleet and equipment and more so, I guess, purchasing time for this. One of the things that we just recently approved is a procurement specialist. I'm looking at some of these costs. Obviously, these are assets that we purchase up front, and we have a total expenditure there of, 1.346 million. I'm just wondering if any of these purchases could potentially be considered in alignment with hiring a procurement specialist that could potentially bring down some of those costs to that, an additional 5% or whatever number that is.
Through the mayor to Councillor Natellenboss. Fleet equipment pricing for budgets and lifecycle management is based on multiple quotes from dealerships. These aren't numbers that are, these are pretty reasonably priced numbers as far as we can tell from our quotes from the dealers. The amounts in the budget also include the cost of outfitting the vehicles, which may include, the example of a half ton that was brought up yesterday. So that includes not only the cost of the truck, but also outfitting that truck for the purposes of the municipality, which may include tonneau covers, emergency beacon lighting, that sort of thing, fire extinguishers, other aspects of what is required. So we've also noticed that through our previous purchases and so on, the price escalations have been quite extensive. For example, I've got some numbers here from previous years. A grader, for instance, in 2019, 320,000 is what we paid, projected in 2024. Not that we're asking for one, but this is just an example. 600,000. We have a loader, 219,000 in 2019, now 380,000. Half-ton truck example, 2019 was $40,000. Last year was 64. This year projected to be over 68. So these are right from the dealership. So we're not just winging it. All of these fleet equipment purchases go through a competitive process, a tender to get bid on. We evaluate the bids based on suitability, availability, as well as cost. So we do our due diligence before we purchase. The prices we put into the budget do have some contingency in there just to make sure that we can do it. Any costs or any funds we don't use go back to the funding source. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for that response. And yes, please don't take that as an insult. I do appreciate that efforts are put in to help minimize cost, but I do see value in that position. And I just want to make sure that we're using it as much as we can. And with these significant investments coming up, I just feel that it would be appropriate to try and save some of these purchases and potentially contracts for ultimately what that position is hired for. So, just quickly looking here, Mayor, if you don't mind, I think I might be done, but.
Okay.
Can you find something quickly? If not, we'll move on.
We will move on.
Okay, that's what we'll do. Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. So clarifying questions have all been handled. So now we're going to follow the same procedure as operating. On page 22, top of the section on capital is renewal. So I'll ask, there's 4 or 5 components: fleet and equipment, facility renewal, parks, playground, transportation renewal program, technology replacement program. Any specific questions from councillors on one of these 5 sections, or any motions from council members on any part of any one of these 5 parts on renewal? Are they fine the way they are? And we move on to growth. Going once. I'm seeing no takers. I'm okay with that. So we have dealt with renewal. It'll proceed as outlined on page 22. We now move into growth, starting with joint high school all the way down to council chamber camera at the bottom of the growth section. With that, open up to council members to discuss parts of growth. Councilor McCoy-Swain, followed by Councilor McCook. Sam, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. So first up here, the joint high school site assembly facility growth, very significant number here. There is a couple of short items I would like to discuss in a closed session. And I believe we've got a motion to speak to that, and then we'll come out in public and debate that, have that discussion. So I'll be making a motion to move into closed session, yes.
I think Madam Clerk has that prepared. Madam Clerk?
And just for the record, I want to explain that the rationale for moving into closed session is section 25 of FOIP, which deals with items of an economic nature, substantial economic nature. So just for the record, I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I appreciate that.
Appreciate that. I will move that council move into closed session pursuant to the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act section 25 at 8:50 p.m.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion from members of council. Seeing none, council, would you please vote on the motion to move into closed session? That carries unanimously, 7-0. We'll move into closed session in a moment here to continue our discussion. Ms. Mead, let us know when we're no longer live, please. Thank you. Oh, yes. I don't see why not. Yeah.